Esoteric and hidden meanings of the first-degree tracing board.
Researched, adapted, written, narrated, and produced by Brother Dr. Iyer Ramos, past Master of Lodge Caledonian No. 554, Scottish Constitution, Jamaica 2025. Chapter 7. Freemasonry's Holy Ground.
All lodges are consecrated before being instituted, and consequently, they are sacred ground. Therefore, as Masons, we should be very conscious of all that we think, say, and do while in a lodge. Our lodge stands on holy ground because the Grand and Royal Lodge of Jerusalem, the model and grand exemplar of all succeeding lodges, was held upon a plot of ground which has been rendered holy by 3 grand offerings made thereupon, and which were met with divine approbation. The first of these was the ready compliance of Abraham with the command of the Almighty, in not refusing to offer up his son, his only son Isaac, a destined victim upon the altar situated on Mount Moriah, this site which was later to hold King Solomon's temple. When it pleased the Lord to accept an inferior offering substituted in his stead. Secondly, the penitential prayers and burnt sacrifices offered up by King David, father of Solomon, upon the same ground while it was used as threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite, and which the Almighty was graciously pleased to accept, and thereupon stayed a pestilence which sorely raged among his people, owing to his having had them numbered. Thirdly, the thanksgivings, burnt sacrifices, and costly offerings made by King Solomon and the princes of the 12 tribes at the completion and dedication of the temple at Jerusalem to God's service. These 3 grand offerings did then, do now, and we trust ever will, render the groundwork of Freemasonry holy.
Our inner holy ground.
We should not lose sight of the esoteric fact that the Temple of Solomon is representative of our own self. Therefore, we should treat ourselves as a divine sanctuary, this being the reason for many churches to remind people correctly that doing right by the Almighty, it is not about writing a check, but about offering yourself, your time, talents, thoughts, words, and actions in the building of the kingdom of God. Bearing in mind that speculative masonry dates its origin from the building of King Solomon's temple by Jewish and Tyrian artisans, the first important fact that attracts the attention is that the operative masons at Jerusalem were engaged in the construction of an earthly and material temple to be dedicated to the service and worship of God, a house in which Jehovah was to dwell visibly by his Shekinah, and whence he was by the Urim and Thummim to send forth his oracles for the government and direction of his chosen people. The operative art having for us ceased, we as speculative masons symbolize the labors of our predecessors by engaging in the construction of a spiritual temple in our hearts, pure and spotless, fit for the dwelling place of Him who is the author of purity, where God is to be worshipped in spirit and in truth, and whence every evil thought and unruly passion is to be banished, as the sinner and the Gentile were excluded from the sanctuary of the Jewish temple.
Spiritualized Temple.
This spiritualizing of the Temple of Solomon is the first, the most prominent, and most pervading of all the symbolic instructions of Freemasonry. It is the link that binds the operative and speculative divisions of the order. It is this which gives it its religious character. Take from Freemasonry its dependence on the temple. Leave out of its ritual all reference to that sacred edifice and to the legends connected with it, and the system itself must at once decay and die, or at best remain only as some fossilized bone, imperfectly to house the nature of the living body to which it once belonged. Temple worship is in itself an ancient type of the religious sentiment in its progress towards spiritual elevation. As soon as a nation emerged in the world's progress out of fetishism or the worship of visible objects, the most degraded form of idolatry, its people began to establish a priesthood and to erect temples. The Scandinavians, the Celts, the Egyptians, and the Greeks, however much they may have differed in the ritual and the objects of their polytheistic worship, all were possessed of priests and temples. The Jews first constructed their tabernacle or portable temple, and then, when time and opportunity permitted, transferred their monotheistic worship to that more permanent edifice, which is now the subject of our contemplation. The mosque of the Mohammedan and the church or the chapel of the Christian are but embodiments of the same idea of temple worship in a simpler form. The adaptation, therefore, of the material temple to a science of symbolism was by no means a novel task to both the Jewish and the Tyrian mind. Doubtless, at its original conception, the idea was rude and unembellished, to be perfected and polished only by future aggregations of succeeding intellects. And yet no biblical scholar will venture to deny that there was, in the mode of building and in all the circumstances connected with the construction of King Solomon's temple, an apparent design to establish a foundation for symbolism. To construct this earthly temple, the operative mason followed the architectural designs laid in the Trestle-board, or book of plans of the architect. By these he hewed and squared his materials. By these he raised his walls. By these he constructed his arches. And by these strength and durability, combined with grace and beauty, were bestowed upon the edifice which he was constructing. The trestle-board becomes therefore one of our elementary symbols, for in the Masonic ritual the speculative mason is reminded that as the operative artist erects his temporal building in accordance with the rules and designs laid down on the trestle-board of the master workman, so should he erect that spiritual building of which the material is a type, in obedience to the rules and designs, the precepts and commands laid down by the grand architect of the universe in those great books of nature and revelation, which constitute the spiritual trestle-board of every Freemason. The trestle-board is then the symbol of the natural and moral law. Like every other symbol of the order, it is universal and tolerant in its application. And while, as Christian Masons, we cling with unfaltering integrity to that explanation which makes the scriptures of both dispensation our trestle-board, we permit our Jewish and Mohammedan brethren to content themselves with the books of the Old Testaments, or the Quran. Masonry does not interfere with the peculiar form or development of anyone's religious faith. All that is asks is that the interpretation of the symbol shall be according to what each one supposes to be the revealed will of his Creator. But so rigidly exacting is that the symbol shall be preserved and, in some rational way, interpreted that it peremptorily excludes the atheist from its communion, because believing in no supreme being, no divine architect, he must necessarily be without a spiritual trestle-board on which the designs of that being may be inscribed for his direction. An aspect in the history of the preparation of the vast quantity of materials for the building of the temple has been seized and appropriated by our symbolic science. We learn from the account contained in the first book of Kings that the house, when it was building, was built of stone, made ready before it was brought thither, so that there was neither hammer nor axe, nor any tools of iron heard in the house while it was building. This mode of construction, undoubtedly adopted to avoid confusion and discord among so many thousand workmen, has been selected as an elementary symbol of concord and harmony virtues, which are not more essential to the preservation and perpetuity of our own society than they are to that of every human association. Likewise, for the average human being to maintain life and growth, the essential sum of all metabolic and cellular processes is about 1 billion biochemical reaction per second in each one of the approximately 37.2 trillion cells in our body. 100 watts are produced by a human at rest. During sporting events, this production increases up to 400 watts and as high as 2,000 watts in short sprints. These incredible and amazing number of activities take place inside the human body in total silence and precise unison, just like during the construction of King Solomon's astonishing building. Furthermore, in the edification of our moral temple, as Masons, we must work constantly, individually, and assiduously in carving, molding, and removing every undesirable inner rubble from our own character, thoughts, words, and actions. This great but arduous work must be achieved in silence and without fanfare. The perfect ashlar, the stone thus fitted for its appropriate position in the temple, becomes not only a symbol of human perfection in itself, of course, only a comparative term, but also when we refer to the mode in which it was prepared, of that species of perfection which results from the concord and union of men in society. It is, in fact, a symbol of the social character of the institution. The perfection of the ashlar is only realized when it becomes useful by perfectly fitting in a structure. Likewise, the profitability of man's perfection is best appreciated when through it he brings beauty and harmony to the creation and thus satisfying the Creator.